Hello and welcome to another ARCHLine.XP webinar. My name is Zoltán Tóth. I'll be your guide today when I show you the toolset of ARCHLine.XP, which is able to handle and manage layers. So today is all about how to handle layers, and when we hear about layers, that can be a bit scary, especially if you're coming from a non-CAD background. So you might not know where to start, you might not know how to handle layers. But today I'm going to show you everything you need to know from zero all the way to the documentation. Today's session is actually the first part of a masterclass webinar series, which is 8 shows planned for the next couple of weeks, which will be all about how to handle the most advanced things about ARCHLine. But as always, I'm not going to show you the advanced stuff right away. I'm going to show you how to get from zero all the way to the end. So today is all about managing layers, and we also have a few shows planned for design phases, doors and windows, teamwork, etc. So if you want to know more about these shows, visit our website archlinexp.com/webinars, where if you scroll down you can find the upcoming shows, or if that's a bit too advanced for you, you can go back to the beginners courses and intermediate courses. And don't forget that if you are looking for something very specific, let's say architecture, then you should go all the way to the bottom, and there you can find relevant courses in this regard as well. But today is all about layers, so that's what we are going to discuss. And when we talk about layers, we need to know why would we want to use them. Well, let me illustrate that with a very nice plot layout that I have over here. So that is what we are aiming at. A very clean layout in which the same building has certain variations and versions. So, for example, we had an architectural plan, now we have a furnishing plan. If I keep on scrolling, I have the same thing, this time with fixtures, ceiling and lighting plans, and electrical accessories, and there's some more tiling layout and the like. So, the point here is that if you want to create something like this, you don't have to build up different variations of the project, you don't have to copy and modify. Instead, you are going to use the same central model, and only using layers you'll be able to get certain variations of the same model. That sounds very good, but let's see how we get there. So this is the beginning phase. This is actually an office complex built in actually a family house. So I guess you are also waiting for the quarantine to be over. So are we. We are still working from home, but sooner or later we are going to return to this environment. So this particular project is one documentation, the whole documentation for this particular home office building. Now the thing is that if you look at it, it's a mess. Many things are on here. So you need to find a way to filter down the content and show only the things that you are looking for. For that, we have layers. Now, when it comes to layers, think about when we were back in school and we had this kind of old school projectors, which the teacher used to project out handouts and the course syllabus, the topics that we were discussing. Now, if you remember, the way these things operated is that the teacher used transparent foils onto which writings was written. And if the teacher superimposed several foils, or let's call them layers, on top of each other, then the things that we saw was a combination of layers. If the teacher removed a few layers, then the content was changed and changed and changed. So it's important to know when you are working in CAD how to filter out things. By the way, if you're experiencing blackouts, that's because of the stream, so the content is still there. So we need to know how to filter this down. But when we talk about layers, it's a bit scary, but let's think about this. Let's look at a tasty example, right? Because we all like cookies, and I have a sweet tooth, so I love cakes. Now, if you would have one single layer of this cake, let's say all the cream and all the biscuit, that will be tasty, of course, but it's the combination of the layers which get to the right result. So combine different layers, strawberry, vanilla, chocolate, etc., and you would have a much better result as opposed to having one single block of cream. So now that we had this forced analogy, let's get to the topic. So as always, I'm encouraging you to ask your questions if anything is not clear, but I'm trying to build this show up from the first couple of steps. So we covered what layers are. Layers are actually the elements onto which you can put the drawing content, and then you can filter down your content. So let's get familiar with them. The layer manager in ARCHLine is found at the bottom right here. Now, what I'm showing you now is not specific to ARCHLine. This is specific to any kind of CAD software. So you see this list and you get scared right away. So you have many layers, weird symbols, and the like. Now, these are all the layers that the software is creating by default when you open up any kind of new project. But luckily, I have a sort of like a quick jump list, a filter with which I can filter down to the content that I actually have. So this setting over here is telling me that these are the contents that I have used. So all the layers which are not in use can be actually ignored. So if you see there's an element column and it shows how many elements you have on that layer, you see that many of the layers are not there. Actually, it's not being used. So you can only focus on the things that you actually need. Now, let's see a particular example, how we filter down the project content. Let's assume that we want to create a version of this project which only has the most important architectural elements, that being walls, doors, windows, slabs, ceilings, and that's all. So how do we do that? First of all, we have to define how and what I want to show. So let's get familiar with the icons up here. So the light bulb shows if a certain layer is on or off, so if you can see it or not, and the padlock shows if that layer could be edited or not. So let's switch everything off. Click on one of the layers, or let's say first click on the wall load bearing wall, and let's make this active. I'm going to explain that later why that's important. So let's click on one of the layers and hit Ctrl A, with which you can select all the layers. Click on the light bulb and hit OK, and now you see most things are now switched up except for the layers that I actually need. Now here's a neat idea. If I go back to the layer manager and I switch this even off, I can switch this particular layer off because it's currently active. So I have the main load bearing walls, I also need the plaster boards, and I also need this slab, and let's say that I want to have the dimensions as well. Okay, let's hit OK. So let's see what happens. Now I have the walls, doors, windows, and dimensions. Let me show you a trick. If I click on the wall, I see that it can be edited, so you can access it. So if you want to do further drawings, you can snap to this point. So if you want to draft, you can snap to the wall just fine. So this works. What about the dimensions? Now the dimensions, they are there, but you can't select them. What gives? Let me go back to the layer manager and show you the trick. If the light bulb is on, the layer can be seen. If the padlock is unlocked, that means that the layer can be edited as well. So you see that the dimension length is currently locked. So no matter what you do, let me just hit OK. No matter what you do, this you cannot really access. So you can access the properties, of course, but you cannot actually move things. You cannot edit them any further. So if you do want to do that, you go back to the layer manager, find the layer that you're looking for and just unlock it. So now I can access the dimensions and I can move them. So that is one trick. Now we just learned two things. One is the light bulb that controls visibility. The other one, the padlock, controls if you can access the things or not. Now the third one is the printing icon. That will become relevant later. That can enable and disable if that certain content can or should be printed out. So recap: visibility, editability, printability. And the fourth one is actually about the number of items located on that layer. So you see that, for example, the decoration layer has a bunch of elements on them, and I don't show them. I don't need them at this point. The rest of the settings we are going to return to later. Now, let's just turn everything back on. So Ctrl A and enable the light bulb and enable the padlocks, open the padlocks. And now everything is built back up. So there is a very handy quick jump list, which enables you to toggle what you want to see, which layers you want to show. Of course, you can go all the way back to the layer manager, that's fine, but we have something that we call a layer walk. Now the layer walk is, what it does is that it shows the layers which are currently in use, and it allows you to pick the layer in which you are interested in which you have content that you want to show. You only want to show the load-bearing walls? That's fine. If you want to show the load-bearing walls plus the dimensions, that's fine. Just hit Ctrl and click on the other layers that you want to show. Maybe with decoration, maybe without. So that would be the way to define when and how you want to show some things. Let me call your attention to something very strange. So I only have the load-bearing walls visualized with some dimensions on the 2D, but in the 3D, I have all the elements. So what gives? How can I disable these things? Or let me ask another way. Should I disable these things? Now, it's up to you. If you are at an early stage of your sketching, you might want to hide things that you don't need all the time, because if you want to make your software to visualize all the monitors and chairs with many surfaces, that might take some time. So the next tool I'm showing you is able to filter down the elements what you want to show in the 3D. So let me jump back into the 2D. Let's pull up the layer walk and decide what we want to show in the 2D and the 3D. So I need to have the walls, slabs, maybe dimensions. That's it. So let me see. Oh, the ceiling would be fine as well. So let's just hit OK. And now I hit the 3D hammer. What it does is that now it's going to actualize the 3D based on the current layer setting in the 2D. Because in ARCHLine, let me just hit OK and wait until this generates. In ARCHLine, it's always the 2D which generates the 3D. So if you have the content like this, press the 3D hammer and actualize the 3D like that. So this way you can avoid, visualizing things that you don't need at this point. Maybe you want to do a preliminary render without the objects. Who knows? It's up to you. So another word about the 3D rebuild, or more like the layer walk. If I open up the layer walk, I see now I have all the layers available which I'm using, and these are the ones which are active. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers are active. Use the same tool, the layer walk, in the 3D, and now what gives? I only see 5 layers. That is because the layer settings of the 2D and the 3D are not going hand in hand. They are actually separated, because the way you are pre-filtering the content here with the layer walk is what is going to be your layer setting in the 3D. So if I go back to the 3D and I go to the layer walk, I can keep on disabling things, right? But I can only disable things which are enabled in the 2D. So I can only switch on and off things in the 3D which are already on in the 2D. Hope that makes sense. So let's go back to the original 2D and talk about how do these layers work? I mean, how does the software know what it should put into what layers? Now, let's go to the 2D and investigate that. So you see that if I select the wall, for example, let me just turn back on the layers. That would be a little bit better for these purposes. So if I click on the object here, I see that it belongs to the layer interior living room furnishing. Okay, that's fine. Let's click on the wall. This one belongs to wall, load-bearing wall. And if I click on the room and area stamp, I see that it belongs to the layer called space. Now, how does the software know where to put and what? Now, this is a default that you can obviously override. So if I want to draw a new wall like that, and I click on its properties, I see that now it belongs to a wall layer. But how does that come into the picture? If I open up the properties of a wall, or let me circle back, if I open up the properties before I draw anything, just right click property, here you can define to which layer the wall should go. So you see it should go to wall, load bearing wall. Now, interesting question is, why is it gray? So how come I cannot edit it? Let's see another example. Let's go with Windows. Right click property. It goes by default to a let me just find where the there should be a setting for which layer it should go to. I can't find it right away, but it should be there. So showing you right away, right again here. So these are the default settings. So what governs that I can't override that? Well, that is a tool which is called a layer control mode, and it's active. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means the following. So if you go to the layer manager and you go to the layers that you are using, you can find the layer which you are making active. Well, it's active now, so what does that mean? It means that all the elements which you are going to place after you make a layer active are going to go to the layer where they belong. So if I, for example, make the interior hall decoration layer active, and I make it like that, and now I go to the object library and go to the table, and I'm putting down this table over here, and if I go to its setting, I see that it goes to a layer called interior hall decoration. Similarly, if I make a wall, it also goes to the same layer. So it's not going to the wall layer, it's not going to any kind of other layers except for the one which is currently active. This is governed by the tool which is called a layer control mode. So if I disable that, so if I disable this option, and now I draw something, let's say the same wall again, now it goes to the wall load bearing wall tool. So these settings that you have over here would take effect. So you can set up to which layers things should go, but this setting would be overridden if you have the layer control mode enabled. Now, when and why you would use the layer control mode, this is mainly useful when you are bringing in data from another CAD software, because you want to keep the line weights, the line colors, for example, but at the same time you want your software to override them to some extent. So just to recap, if you have the layer control mode on, which is under edit, so if you have this active, I'm not making it active now, then whatever layer is active, that is going to be the parent layer of this object. It doesn't mean that you cannot relocate things. In fact, let me show you how to relocate things from one layer to the other. But first, I have to get rid of this thing. So we learned that how do layers come into the picture? The software creates them. So if you have a new item selected, then the software creates a new layer to them. But what happens if you have an element like that? This is a wall elevation generated from the kitchen, and I want to put this into another layer. So what do? I go to the layer manager, go to all layers, and now I'm going to find a layer which I like. There's no layer called wall elevation, so I just have to create a new one for myself. So I click on add new layer, and by clicking on it I can name it wall elevations, enter. Now I see currently there's no content on it. The padlock is unlocked, so I can edit it and I can see this layer, so that's okay. Click on the wall elevation, and in the property grid do this drop down. Currently my elevation belongs to a layer called space, but that's not good for me, so I'm going to scroll down all the way until I find wall elevation. Now it's already there, so there's nothing else you need to do. You just need to click on the layer and it's moved there. So let me demonstrate what the result is. If I go to the layer walk and I disable the wall elevation, it would be gone. So that is a very effective way to organize your project content. By default, the software would try its best to organize things based on their roles. So walls would be put onto the wall layer, columns to the column layer, etc. But there might be times when you need to manually override what belongs to which layer. Let me demonstrate. So we have this office space in here. So if I click on one of the chairs, I see it belongs to the interior living room furnishing layer. But if I go to the design center, and let's say there's another chair in here and I want to use that from the object library, so I'm just going to say chair and find something in the library which I like. Maybe, well, let's go with something basic like an office chair or something. Here we go. I think that will be fine for our purposes. So let's just put it down like this. And if I click on this, I see that it belongs to interior hall decoration, and that's not good for me because now we are in the office. So I want this element to have the same layer as this. I want it to go to let's say, which one is the layer for that? Let me just review that very quickly. So if I go to these settings, I should be able to see that. So I want this to go to another layer. How do I do that? I go to the layer settings and manually override what's in here. So if I know that this should go to interior office decoration, then I do that. But for that, I might need to sort of create additional layers. So the point here is that the software would organize your content based on layers, but if you want to override that, if you want to change that, you have every right to do so. So you can do that. You just go to the layer manager and find what you're looking for. So let's just go to use layers, and I see that now the things are coming together, but there's one issue what I'm facing with. There are too many layers in here. I need to delete a few, but you have to be very, very careful about what and how you are going to delete, because the things which would have elements on them cannot be deleted. Let me demonstrate with this false ceiling layer. If I want to delete this, the software would tell you that, well, it cannot be done because this layer contains elements. So if you delete the layer, then everything which is on the layer would be gone. So you don't want to do that. If you do want to do that, you can go all the way down here and you can use this jump list and go to also delete use layers and content. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to delete my layer which has elements on it. But if you ever in the situation when you want to delete a layer with elements on it, that's what you can do. Now let's discuss what these little guys in here are, the filters and the variations. Now they are a bit similar, but they do different things. So let me show you first the filters. The filters now it has two ways actually. One is all the layers that I have right now, and the other option is the layers that I'm actually using now. So what it does is that it filters down the content to the content that you're actually using. You can add additional layer filters by clicking on this plus icon. Let's say I want to have a layer filter which shows only the decorational elements. So I'm just, let's call it furnishing. And what I want to do is that all the layers which have decoration or furnishing on it would be selected and dragged onto the furnishing layer. So let me just do that. The interior hall decoration, furnishing. This one is good. So what I do, I just click, drag, and drop in here. So now I see that the original layers obviously are not gone, but I can now filter down all the use layers to only the furnishing ones. So if you want to manage the layers as sort of groups, then this is the way to do it. There's another way to do it, but first just let's recap. So if you want to create subcategories or sub-collections of your layers, then this is how you can do that. But this is not the way you can create this. So if you want to create a layout like that one, which filters down the content to exactly the things that you're looking for, there's another tool to do that, and that is called the layer variations. Let me go back to all layers and show you how this works. So if I click on the plus, I can add additional variation, and this variation would be, let's say, only the architectural elements with dimension lines, location, room and area stamps maybe, and maybe annotations. I'm not sure about that. So I'm just going to hit plus. And now, excuse me, I have a new group added. Sorry, I need to have a drink of water. Just a second. Okay, so now I have a new group, which I can name. And the name would be architecture, like that. So now I have the layers. I think everything is now on. So I need to define what I want to show and what I want to hide. So I'm just going to click on one of the layers, hit Ctrl A, turn off everything. Obviously I can't turn this off because it's currently active, so just let's click on a layer which I know would be available. So let's just make this one active, and the interior hall decoration should be turned off. So okay, so what do I want to show? I want to show the elevations. I don't want to show the plasterboard wall. I want to show the space tags, the slab, and maybe the length and opening dimensions. So how do I synchronize this with the current layer variation? I click on this button over here, like that. So now it's synchronized. So now I have currently two variations. One is all layers enabled, and the other one is just the architectural content. Let's make another one, and this time it would be furnishing, for example. So right click on the new group and rename it and say this is furnishing. And this time hit Ctrl A, turn everything on or off, it doesn't matter, whichever is better for you to work with, and define what you don't want to show. So do we want the wall elevation? Well, no. Walls I do need, and the space tag I don't need. The slab, yes, I do need. Raster image, now I need it because it's actually a colored floor plan. Molding I need, lighting not, and dimensions I do not need. So I think anything else might go, so let's just hit update, and let's have a third one, I think, and the third one would be an electrical plan. So let's just do it like that, and now I have an electrical version. So now I have all layers, architectural only, furnishing only, oh, here I made a mistake. I didn't synchronize my changes. So if I see the furnishing plan, I see that everything is the same as in architecture. So that was a mistake I did. I didn't refresh it. So let's just go back for a second and define what I want to show. The space I do not need, molding I do need, lighting I don't, and the decoration elements I do need. It's your decision if you want these layers to be editable or not. Let's just make them all editable. It never hurts, because I might need to touch these layers later on, so I need to make them editable like that. So now I hit synchronize. Okay, and now I have the architectural and the electrical plan, and now I have a furnishing one. The electrical, what should it contain? Let me just think about that for a second. The electrical should have the false ceiling, obviously, so I just hit Ctrl A, disable everything. And I think I would need the walls, obviously, slabs, and the lighting. And I think that is all for now. So nothing else would be needed. You would get the idea as you proceed. So hit the update variation. And now what happened here is that I have in this list up here 3 or 4 versions of the same project. For example, I have all the layers enabled. I have architectural elements only, I have electrical plans, electrical elements only, and I have furnishing only. So with this very clever tool, well, as an afterthought, maybe I don't need the ceiling. So let's see how that works. So I'm satisfied with this, but for the furnishing plan, I don't need the ceiling. So I go back to the layer manager, I go to the furnishing plan, and I find the false ceiling, and I'm going to turn it off, synchronize, and it's gone. So that's the way to do it. So now I have 4 variations altogether of the same project. I need to know how to handle them and how to work with them. So just to recap, the layers, they have a general switch. Here you can turn on and off what you want to see, but the layer filters filter down the content, so you can manage the filters a bit more effectively. But the most important thing here for us is the variations, which have, well, they have the same layers for sure. So they have the same layers as any other setting, but here you can define one by one, variation by variation, what you want to show and what you want to hide. Let's put this into action and let's create a layout. So our purpose is to create a layout which has several pages, and on every single page there would be a different version of the same plan with different elements and items being shown or hidden. So how do we do that? We already know that the layout can be reached with documentation and plot layout. Here there's several things you can define. So you can, for example, define the paper size. I think A3 would be fine. It would be a landscape, and I want to go with a plot stamp. By the way, if you want to add another plot stamp, you can go to this plus and you can find the one that you're looking for, or you can just create a new one. So let's just hit OK, and now the software tells me I can drag and drop elements into this layout. I start with a plot stamp, and the software asks me if I want to fill out the plot stamp with the project parameters, which I have defined previously. I'm going to accept that, so I'm just going to say the project is Family Business Office, and designation is going to be architectural plan. Like that, hit enter. And now my task is to drag and drop the content. So I have the ground floor now, and I'm just going to drag it, drop it, and drop it in 1:50 scale, like that. Okay, here's my issue. I want to have an architectural plan, but the plan that I have just dragged and dropped, it has the items, the elements on it, and it has no dimension lines, so this is not good for me. Do I go back to the layer manager? Not really, because here, the way this works, this content works, is that if I click on it, I see that it has sort of like a frame through which, let me just move this, through which I see the original content. So this is actually a viewport where you can define how much of the project you want to show, and maybe you want to hide some parts, maybe you want to show more. But it's not only about setting up what you want to show and hide, it's also about editing the content that you want to see. So if I click on this pencil icon, I have this setting in which I can not only define the scale in which I want to see this content, I can also access the layers. So if I click on the layer button, I can choose whichever layer variation I want to see. So if I hit OK now, and I hit OK again, I see that the plan just changed, and now it turned from a furnishing plan into an architectural plan, which also means that I need to fine-tune the range of my plan, because some dimensional lines are missing now, but I can amend that very quickly. So let me do just that, and now I see an architectural plan. Some I think the space info is missing, so I'm just going to go back and change that. So let me just go back to the 2D and see what was going on. I think the space, yes, the space is turned off for whatever reason. I want to visualize that, so let me just hit OK. And now I might need to actualize the drawing. So I'm just going to go to the settings, layers, and it's going to be an architectural experience like that. So now I have the layers, the room and area stamps as well. So okay, that's page 1. How do I add another one? I go to documentation plot layout, and I'm going to prepare another plot layout with the same sizes, but this time the software asks me, okay, do you want to create an entirely new page or add another page next to this one? Well, I want to add another page as a separate file, so I'm just going to say yes. And now the story starts from the beginning. The plot stamp is filled with the plan details, and I'm just going to say this would be a furnishing plan, enter, and with drag and drop, I'm going to drag and drop the element that I'm looking for. This will be in 1 to 50, and this time I need to be careful about which version I have. If I go to the pencil icon, I can define that this should be a furnishing plan. Okay, I think that was no change because that was a default. So now I have a furnishing plan, and the third page should be, so now I have A1, which is the architectural plan, A2, that is the furnishing plan, and there should be an A3, which is the electrical plan. Again, prepare plot layout, accept the defaults, new page, okay, plot stamp is filled. If I click in the plot stamp, I can say that this is a electrical plan. Here you go. And now I'm just going to drag and drop the ground floor again. So same content, same scale, only this time it is going to be an electrical plan. And I can do that by clicking on the pencil icon, and I say from the layer variations I'm choosing the electrical. Let's just quickly check if everything's alright. I think it's all good, so let me just hit OK. Update the content, and I think something is still missing here, so let me just go back to the electrical and see what is missing from this plan. I think lighting was there. Let's just hit OK and see. Maybe certain elements were blocked from printing, or something like that. Yes, I'm not entirely sure why this did not visualize. Let me just see. Lighting is there and the elements are there on it too. Maybe that was something with the print setups. Okay, I wasn't sure what was the problem, but now it is the same. Maybe I had to refresh the layout. So again, you can define how large you want your scale to be, so how much you want to see. But the bottom line is that now I have 3 layouts. I have an architectural plan, a furnishing plan, and a like an electrical plan. And now the task is to actually print that. By the way, before I do, just one thing, a very neat tool is this, the magnify tool, which reorganizes your drawing area so you're not going to drown in the plot layout. So let's go with the printing, which can be accessed by file. Print to PDF could be a solution, but I don't want to print one solitary page. I want to print a set of pages, like a multi-page PDF, which has all the elements next to each other. So you don't have to merge the PDFs later on. You have all the PDFs as page 1, architectural plan, page 2, furnishing plan, page 3, electrical plan. So let's go with the print queue and click on this plus icon, which tells you that, okay, here's your project navigator at the first page, which I know is page number 1. I think that's the architectural plan. So when I do that, the printing dialog comes up where I can define when and how I want to visualize things. First of all, I have to define what I want to do with the printer. I want to print to PDF, and I want to save it into a file, so I have to designate the file name. So this should be layout webinar. Okay, and the page size, it has to be A3, and the orientation should be landscape. and I think now is the time to actually find the content to be able to see it here. So what I do is that I always go with a scale of 1 to 1. Why do I do that? Why don't I scale down my content? Well, that's because the plot layout has already scaled it down. So if I would scale it down to 1 to, let's say, 100 again, then it would be a tiny particle of a project. So I just want to go back to 1 to 1. And I want to center it to the plot. If you don't see the content, just go to preview and you would see it right there. So I think I now have to rotate the drawing as well. Preview, just 1 second. I think I have to go with portrait and preview again. And I need to, I think the paper sizes are not the same. Let's just try something. Let's just go with view and do it like that. Here we go. Because now I'm defining what I want to see on my page. So let's just go to preview and here we go. We just fixed it. So it should be 1 to 1, center the plot and preview, and now I can print it. Before I do, hit apply. And I go to page 2, which I can do by clicking on the plus icon, and I go with page number 2, which is the furnishing plan. So if I go here, I can do the same thing, only this time it's going to be page number 2. So I have to say it's 1 to 1 scale, it's centered to the plot, and I can go on and on and on. So that should be, again, if I want to define what I want to actually see, maybe I want to have a different page size, but that would be the idea. So I define how large I want the content to be, and in this dialog I can say I want it to be centered, and again hit apply, and comes the third page, which would be the A number 3. So I'm just going to click on it, hit OK, and say that this should be again a view that I want to print. So, and it goes on and on, as many pages as you want. So here, when you do this, the software automatically activates the layout in which you are working. So that's page number 3. That is the layout. So what I'm looking for. So it will be page number 3, 1 to 1, center the plot, apply, and I think I'm good to go. So I'm just going to hit print, and I'm waiting for a second until the PDF writer does its magic, and then I would walk away with a 3-page PDF. Page 1 would be an architectural plan, page 2 would be a furnishing plan, and page 3 would be my electrical plan. In just a second, one thing I haven't talked about with the layer settings is how to disable things from printing, and that's the thing what I'm going to discuss next. So let me just rotate the page. And I have page number 1, page number 2, page number 3. So that way you can add certain variations of the same project using the layers. So layers do all kinds of magic. And one thing what I haven't discussed, but if you have, for example, if you have a plan like that and you have the layers and you have the lighting element enabled here, and for whatever reason you don't want the lighting elements to print, then you go back to your original content, pull up the layer manager and say that for the electrical plan, I do not want the lighting. I want it to be visible, but I don't want it to be printed. So that way you can disable that. If that's what you need, that's where you can do it. But if you forget about switching it back, then that might get a bit confusing later on. So bottom line is, if you are printing something out, and for whatever reason it's not showing up on your preview or your print, then make sure you check the layer visibility and the printing setup, because maybe it's being blocked from printing. So that is what I wanted to discuss. From a very messy plan, we got all the way to a very clean layout. So that would be the idea. That would be the path that you should be following. Use these layers to your advantage. Just recapping the most important things. If you use the layers, you can filter them and manage the project content. The layer settings of the 2D and the 3D are different, so you might be able to see things in the 2D which you don't see in the 3D and vice versa. Create layer filters and variations to effectively control your content, and at the end, when it comes to printing the layouts, that's where you can define with the layers how and what you want to print. So that is what I wanted to discuss, and now it's on to the questions. I see questions are coming in. So the default plot layout naming is set to A1, A2. Can this be changed by default? The layer, the printing settings is, let me just pull it up. So as you know, in our software, everything comes with styles. things that you can localize and change. And for example, one good example for that would be when you are creating walls and you go with building wall and you have a set of styles you can choose from your predefined walls. If you want to use a brickwork, or if you have a double or a multi-layered wall, then that's where you can do it. Just use the styles. Same thing applies for lines, dotted, dashed, solid lines, curves. That's all here in styles. Same applies to when you are printing things. So when you are doing a printout, you can have printing styles enabled. So if you have the most recently, or if you have favorite settings for printers, maybe default paper sizes, maybe something here, or default printing you want to choose, then you just go with the style manager and save it as a new style. You see I have one style set up, which is a default A4 portrait, but you can have many different styles, and that can be a default. So that is the answer to the question. Default plot layout naming is set to something. Can this be changed? Yes, you can change it to something else. So hopefully that was eye-opening about the layers. And tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Thursday we have lesson 2 of the advanced course, the masterclass of ARCHLine, and that is about design phases. Now, design phases are a bit similar to what I discussed here. So they are a bit similar to layers in that you can show what you want to show and hide what you don't want to show, but design phases do a bit more because they are going to track the changes in your design, and you can visualize the several instances of one plan on the same layout. So you can show that what are the elements which were there before the design have started, and show the elements which will be demolished and the elements which will be built after demolishing is done. So design phases are there to actually not only control the project content, but show the project life cycle, if you like. Yes, question, or I don't know if it's a question. Grouping layers to turn on and off at once is good to manage when working. Oh, that's one thing I haven't showed you. Thanks for reminding that. So if you have, let me just go back to the software. If you have layers of groups like this, and you have the furnishing, let me first turn off all the layers on. So like that. So now I have everything on. And if you have a layer group like that, here, for example, the furnishing, you can turn that off with a simple click. So you don't have to go all the way and click them on manually one by one, or just Control-A them, just go with off, and then everything will be turned off right away. So that is a good practice to sort of quickly jump into the layer groups and turn them off. Similarly, if you are importing a DWG, for example, or a file from another person, another peer of yours, then the file will be assigned to a layer group. I'm going to show you that again. So let's go with import and importing a DWG, maybe this Elatonova DWG I used before. So if I do that, and if I open this content, then in the layer group, now I have another layer by default generated for any kind of new DWG. So that is an important thing. Thank you very much for pointing this out. Okay, is there a template file to preset layers and it can be used by new projects? That's an interesting question. So it's being asked every now and then, how do I have my own layers? So as you already know, the software does its own default layers whenever you create something. But if you create additional layers and you want those layers to be automatically opening up when you open up a new project, you can do it in the settings. And you go to open and save, and you say that copy project settings to other projects, this one, and then whatever you have currently set up here in terms of units, line types, styles, and even layer distribution, then that would take effect on other projects that you're opening up. So that was what I wanted to discuss. Thank you very much for the questions. Like I said, on Thursday we are going on with design phases. My colleague Iles would be doing that presentation. And now we are going to have presentations on every Tuesday and Thursday, and these master classes are hopefully good enough for you to get to get the best out of what ARCHLine has to offer. So if you have any questions after the show, as always, you can ask them on the usual channels, in comments, or at info@ARCHLine.XP.com, or just a direct email to me. I think you all have my email address. So if you like this show, like it and subscribe to our channel so you're never going to miss a similar show again. Again, I would like to thank you for your attention and see you on Thursday.